Hi, everyone. Ronald Ingram, your rebel banker, quantum futurist, broadcasting from the high Nevada desert overlooking the Luxor Pyramid. Today, I'll give you a recap on what we have accomplished with Spock. Spock, your utility meme coin, the key to the agentic commerce world of the future, the fuel for financial services in explainable AI decision making, machine to machine commerce or agentic commerce, and NeoScore for an alternative to credit scoring that is more customer centric, that gives data ownership back to the individual. So, very exciting project, and this has been a very exciting buildup. We launched this project now March 27th, so almost not even a month yet, and we have been doing well. We're hanging out at around our all-time highs of around 72,000 in market cap, over 72K market cap. And that's fine. This is just the very early stages. You'll see, but we have accomplished an awful lot. I was just kind of going through what we've been doing here at Spock in the last few weeks. We have produced over a dozen infographics, multiple articles, videos, video clips, probably nearly a dozen live streams between Pump Fun and now here on X and on YouTube as well. So, and tonight I'm multicasting on YouTube and on X. So, thanks everyone for joining and for being part of this project. And again, you're at the very early stages of this project, which has a lot of. We've already accomplished a lot, but we've got a lot more exciting work to do ahead. And we're not even really at the beginning of the first S curve, I wouldn't say. And already we are seeing good traction. And have you seen my last couple of posts that I mentioned with the Neobank conference that I'm co-chair of, and where we'll have the head of the Senate Banking Committee, Tim Scott, and his senior staffer, Colin Carr, who will be speaking to us at this virtual conference on May 5th. It's a 3-day conference, virtual, and so that is. And I've made just a couple of quick posts about that, and we're seeing. I think we're getting some eyeballs. We're getting, I think, 60, 70,000 views of those posts. So that's really not with a lot of effort. I'm just really keeping up and trying to keep everyone on board, and only really posting those things that I think are really kind of material to the project, but not all of it. Just the things that I just really have to post. Like there's been so much activity in the agentic commerce world. Like even it exceeds what we would have expected. And my timing, our timing, I've got to say, has been pretty spot on. Just ahead of the curve here with CEO of Coinbase and announcing an agentic marketplace for machine-to-machine transactions. Already hundreds of thousands of transactions, I believe, in just a few days. And one of the things that they say is missing, or a key constituent part. There are a couple, but one that we already have the solution for is the MBC is a token designed specifically for machines, and we have that. That was one of the first things that we did, and this is as a recap. We We launched our coin in the first week into with an inscription into Moltbook, so that it's been out there and readable and in the awareness, if you will. Machines have awareness uh, of Moltbook, and many uh, autonomous, semi-autonomous agents out there are already aware of Spock. And the next stage is where we increase that level of. This is one of the things, skipping ahead to what's coming up next week, is we're going to be doing a lot more effort now that the corporate site is up. That's another recap item. That was quite a lot of work. Normally, to get a corporate site up like that, the neobanks.com site that I'm referring to get a site like that up in at my bank, at other large institutions and organizations that I've worked at. By the time you have committees look at it, and all the different departments look at it, and legal look at it, and then goes through iterations and fine tuning, and it takes months to even though the technology side isn't the barrier. Even it's all of the different individuals and departments and committees and boards and things that have to look at something as important as the whole corporate website. So pretty good quality site, and quite comprehensive. And I think one thing that congratulations to all of you who are watching this and have been participating from early days, or just joining us. Even if you're just joining us today for the first time, you are very, very early. You're still seeing kind of like the plumbing, right? I was thinking about this the other day. Spock, and get into a lot of these on the first few days. There's, what is it? How does it work? What? I still don't get it. And it takes a lot of explaining and repeating to get people to understand it. And even then, it's kind of like describing the plumbing in your house, right? And when we should probably be describing just the faucet. Hey, we've got this really cool faucet. You open it up and water comes out right in your kitchen, right? That's the next stage of simplification that I'm going to get to. And I've been really, we've been really looking at every part of the interaction, because having onboarded over 10 million accounts into mobile accounts, which everyone is pretty familiar with these days. But even then, it's, I've learned that any little bit of friction along the way you lose people. Same thing with I was founded a company that is now the engine behind Worldline and processes a good chunk of global payment transactions for merchant acquiring. And same thing there, merchant shopping cart abandonment, would be the big thing that you just have to engineer minutely, right? And I don't think that we're there yet even with the big players making it easier and easier and easier. There's still a long ways to go before the crypto world is as intuitive as a debit card, even or a good mobile app. Because there's the difference between SoFi and Green Dot and Chime and all the almost has-beens out there is really comes down to a lot of. It's not about a little bit more on the reward. It's not about a special savings account. There's a few key things, and one of those key things is the user experience from onboarding. And I said that we still have a long ways to go, but we're going to get there in a short time. I can assure you. That's all I'm going to say today, but that's going to be one of the focuses next week. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, because I tend to be optimistic about timelines, and I always get there. Sometimes it's 12 20-30% longer than I expect. Getting the corporate website out, that took a week longer than expected, but still, relative to the grand scheme of things, to get a good corporate website out there, a 5-6 days, that's not bad. And so other milestones. So we've got the videos. I put numerous articles out there. Filed a new patent to further to increase the depth and span of the moat around Spock and around our business here, which is very collaborative, and we are not patent trolls. We're open to, as you see on the neobanks.com website, we're open to licensing, and that's a good way to collaborate, is like to define your intellectual property and then collaborate with partners that can add value. But we don't just want to give away the farm, right? We want to we have original thoughts, original ideas, and we want to monetize those for the benefit of all stakeholders, especially Spockholders. So or Spock stars. I think that's a good one, right? A good moniker for all the community members that have been following this journey. So back to so so we filed a patent. We've got we've got a bit of a group on Telegram. I've been focusing more of the efforts here on X, and I'm just starting a little bit on LinkedIn. I posted about the upcoming Neobank conference, where we'll be talking a lot about explainable AI, and there are 4 real components to, or 3 components to Spock, 4 components, Spock being one of the 4. So you've got the Neo score, which is what I mentioned at the beginning. That is a new methodology, a more fair kind of inversion of the credit scoring system, where rather than legacy credit bureaus controlling everything and getting and selling your data and scoring you, where we have a more transparent model where the customer owns their own data, decides what they want to share, and also has insight into how their score is changing on a minute by minute basis, almost in real time. And this also helps improve the customer experience. And right now, it's a black box, right? There's lots of guessing. There's lots of articles and more transparency. That basically, not thanks to very much to credit bureaus. I think you try to kind of keep it obscure so that people don't game their system. But you have more and more, a greater push for transparency, whereas our system is designed with transparency up front, and that makes it easier to manage as well. Because right now, you get a credit score is a score that is relatively opaque and obscure, and you don't really know if there's false information in there without doing a lot of digging. And sometimes you don't know until after your score is already changed. You see it and that doesn't look right, and you have to dig in. And it's easier now. You can now see that maybe your utilization rate was outside of the parameters that they expected, and things like that. But there's also more variety in credit scores. Are kind of designed for the median person, for the masses. And I don't know about you, but I've never met anybody that says, "Hey, look at me, I'm one of the masses," right? Who wants to be? There's even in the fintech world, there was a company, and their tagline was "banking for the masses." Like, how terrible is that, right? I want everybody to have a concierge level service, and with AI, that's going to be possible. That's over on the banking side, though. But which is there's a future bank project in Spock's roadmap as well. You can see that in one of the infographics that I've posted. That's quite revolutionary, as because that's what's fun to do, right? To disrupt and innovate, and it's fun to be looking for not just destroying, but creating new, better things, right? And that requires sometimes to get rid of the old, which is going to lead into my biohacking tip. I like to give a biohacking tip every time I do one of these. So it's autophagy today, and sometimes the systems need autophagy. Autophagy is when the body purges or eats its own dead cells and or recycles them. That's a more pleasant way of saying it. Recycles old material into new material, essentially, and that happens after there's big news a few years back about the Japanese scientist who won the Nobel Prize for his protocol with and work and research on this breakthrough understanding of how autophagy works in the body to rejuvenate us physically. And the only way to you don't want to preserve old cells, and you don't want to preserve the decay. You want to replace the decay with new, fresh cells, and stem cells create that. But what triggers the stem cells? Well, one of the things is autophagy, and there are a number of different ways to do autophagy. So I'll go back to I haven't even finished the recap yet, but I'm going to continue down this segue into, because it's so apropos around what needs to happen with the financial system, what we're doing. We are the solution. The Spock, the Ingram Valuation Matrix, the NEO score, and the machine-to-machine commerce, those four elements, that is the solution to clean it up and make and start fresh and make financial systems work more efficiently for everybody. And the advent of artificial intelligence and this singularity pace of change, acceleration of change, is reset in all aspects of life, is the perfect opportunity for us, and in particular, and we're seeing it in biology and biohacking and breakthroughs in medical science and all of these things every day. But so back to autophagy, how do you do it? How do you get it? So in my protocol, one thing that is so powerful that I did a whole series on YouTube on it, on autophagy breathing, and just a breathing technique that takes about 15 minutes a day, and a fairly simple cycle. And there could be other cycles that work, but this is a 6-6-12 breathing cycle. So in for 6, hold for 6, out for 12. I've tried with other parameters as well, but that's a good one to start with. And then at the end of a period of around 9-10 minutes or so, you hold the exhale, and that's what and that minute and a half, do whatever is comfortable for you. And disclaimer, not a doctor, biohacker here, so always this is not medical advice. Do your own research, and this is my intellectual property, POV, personal point of view. So I'm just sharing my experiences and my research. Do your own research, not medical advice. And especially want to emphasize this one, because I'm going to tell you one technique that I use, and even breathing, even the breathing sequences can, are very powerful, and people need to check with their need to be sure that they're healthy for it. So don't consider this to be medical advice. I experiment on myself, and that's my prerogative. It's my body, my choice. And so same with you. It's you make your own decisions, right? So that is pretty powerful on its own. I reduced my biological age in over a span of about 21 days by 18 months. And it's fairly objective criteria to measure this. And that's one of the things that's really driving biohacking is now it's just not, oh, I feel good, I look good, or I don't. And I guess I'm getting younger or feeling, guess this word, guessing. The guessing is coming out, and objective measurement, more scientific measurement is more readily available. So when I say 18 months, I reduced my age by 18 months. What I mean is that my biological age measured by DNA, the DNA methylation tests using third-party lab results, LabCorp, not sponsored by them, but I often use LabCorp. Get the full panel and run that through the models and standard models that are being used in the longevity World Cup and different contests that are emerging for biohackers, and to determine who is most successful in their, or whose protocol is most successful, who's having the most success in reducing their biological age. And I just defined what I actually mean by that. People get tied up around the terminology, but it's you literally plug in your numbers and you can determine whether your biological age is, whatever it is, and your chronological age. And if your biological age is number is reducing, then the easy way to say that is you've reduced your biological age, right? So, so I have throughout my whole protocol, I think tally is, and I'm overdue for my blood work, so that'll be coming up. I'll post that on my biohacking channel. I keep this more focused on Spock, but yeah, right. My last record was at 25 years reduction by biological age. So happy with that result. That is kind of among the best that I'm aware of. And I'm aiming pretty high. I'm aiming for something called the Health Span X Prize, which has a $101 million prize at the end for a person or team that has demonstrates a protocol that can reduce biological aging by a significant amount. You need at least 20 years to be in the ballpark, I think. So yeah, so that's so I've been on quite a journey, and a lot of this is going to be detailed in my book, which is Health and Wealth, and that's my jam. So primarily in this community, we talk about the wealth aspect, which is crypto and banking, and not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not a security. And so I've got all the disclaimers out of the way. Oh, I'm not a lawyer either. Okay, so there we go. All the disclaimers out of the way. So here I talk more about the financial side, but my book, Genius, the book, Live Long and Prosper, is about health and wealth, and I have the full protocol that I use detailed in that book. But like I said, for these talks, I give one biohack tip. And so the last part of it is, so that's the breathing technique. I also did I do a hyperbaric chamber once in a while. I did one yesterday, and that's pretty interesting, and have an interesting methodology that I use. Biohacker is not, I don't just go sit in the machine. And usually start out like a 1.25 atmospheres, pressurized oxygen, and is hyperoxygenating your body. It has a big impact on your skin because of that, because it's That's the interface, right? With this pressurized oxygen is your skin. I'm guessing that's one of the reasons that you see some of the most dramatic results in terms of telomere length and other biomarkers are often related to affect your skin. And that's not something. It's usually used for athletes and rejuvenation, and tennis pros use it. I find it also very great for cognition. And here's the interesting thing. Now, really, this is not recommended. This is my own experimentation, but I do autophagy breath, just one segment within the hour inside the H-spot, and I'm up to 2 atmospheres. It's fascinating because if you try this, just try this on your own. Just on your next breath out, just hold that while you're listening to me. Just breathe out. Just hold that for as long as you can, and count or look at your watch. But you're going to start to feel, well, I won't tell you how you'll feel, but and don't push yourself too hard, but it'll start to feel uncomfortable pretty quickly. And that is, but you want to go just a little bit beyond the comfort zone, and not too much, just a little bit beyond that comfort zone. And what you're doing there is you're triggering a little bit of autophagy. Now, if you combine that with intermittent fasting and other things, it amplifies it. If you do it in the H-spot, I haven't seen any studies on this yet, but it amplifies that effect. And it's really neat. I guess it's not a big surprise, but so normally when on my exhale, it starts to get really uncomfortable beyond a minute. And initially it's like 45 seconds when I started practicing. Now I can a minute and a half, 2 minutes, I'm like out, right? That's not passed out, but 2 minutes is about as long as I can go. And but in the H-spot, 3 minutes is easy. And we get to today or yesterday, I did 3 minutes, 41 seconds on the exhale, and just that was the same level of discomfort at 3.4 minutes as it is normally for a minute. So you could definitely, it's kind of neat when you can really feel something happening, right? And notice that, wow, that's different. So again, don't try that at home. There's no research on it that I'm aware of. I do research on myself, and it's informed, and I have reasons for doing what I do, and everybody's different. Okay. So enough on that. I kind of went a little over on that, but so back to Spock. So I talked a lot last time about the Ingram evaluation matrix, went in detail, but the core there is you use Spock. So a financial institution or an individual that wants to use, has a high stakes decision to make, a big choice to make, they could access the Ingram evaluation. Initially, and this is over the span of the last 30 days based on feedback, say, why would I just give this to bankers, right? Why not empower everybody with a super genius robo-banker? That's going to cost them pennies, or a dollar, to get a detailed analysis of a complex question or less, and those prices will come. And if you're paying with Spock, then those prices will come down, because the prices are set in the prices to ping the scoring model are set in dollars, but the value of the token is floating based on scarcity, kind of like Bitcoin. The supply, this is why machines love Spock, is we've got a fixed supply, and so as tokens are burned, and when a single use, for those unfamiliar with the term burn, because there are a lot of newbies that are starting to come here, and I like to use as much plain English as possible for people. So burn is a jargon word for people that aren't familiar with crypto, but it basically means single use, right? So one and done, kind of like a coupon, right? You buy the coupon, you use it, it's spent. Any developers, of course, are very familiar with kind of the token concept of buy your tokens. You utilize the tokens as you're utilizing whatever software, whatever application it is, whatever model it is that you're using. Well, the IEM is like that. It's like a model, but it's paid for in a fungible token, right? So Spock is fungible. It can be, which means that's kind of a jargon word too, isn't it? But it just means it can be converted into Bitcoin or US dollars, or it can be converted from one form into another. So it's fungible. It's not a currency, it's not money, but that is one of the qualities of money, and it's one aspect of tremendous utility, even for humans. The newbies they're kind of blown away when the first time they get a wallet, and they're like, "What? I can send Spock to my my kid who's traveling, backpacking through Europe or whatever, and yeah, you can, and then you can, and then your child can convert that into whatever currency they need in that country. It could also be used. There's a tool for locking your tokens. So there's a large portion of the liquidity of Spock is locked in for 2 years, to invests over 2 years to fund the project, but gives people absolute certainty, really, that there's no possibility of what's called a rug, another term, right? But it's not just a crypto term, but the big risk that happens so often in pump fund with most meme coins in the first minutes, and this is why most meme coins are gone in a day these days, and they're pumped and dumped, literally, and gone in a day. We're in the 1% category, less than 1% probably now, probably the 0.1%, going, not just surviving, but thriving. And we will, like I said, continue to thrive. It's a whole different model, right? This is a whole different paradigm that we're seeing. And this is what the future of crypto is. And even meme coins I see, there'll probably be more meme coins that are like Spock. Spock is Spock, right? It's got some cool cultural, iconic, memorable, historical, cultural value that connects, at a deep level, and that's fun and memorable, right? That's what meme is. It doesn't need to be just news of the day. And when you create a meme coin for news of the day, it means you want to make that news memorable and last longer, right? Or there's a memorable event. And so I think kind of the idea, like, of what a meme is well, a meme is what people determine it to be, right? But there is a really profound, deep psychological construct at play with the notion of memes that's ancient. The Art of Memory is a fantastic book, right? And understanding memory, that was actually the source of what became propaganda, and that was used in communist countries. And what is propaganda? It's trying to get an idea in and make it stick. And how do you do that? Well, the people that mastered that early in society were the storytellers, the bards. They're like my parents, I would joke, they're nomadic troubadours, right? Musicians, storytellers, poets. They would make rhymes and folk tales and fairy tales and these things, which some of them are extremely ancient and fascinating to study. So that all of this is wrapped into this thing that we joke about as a meme coin, and it is a joke in a way. But jokes, that's another memory tool that was used. I've got a book back in my stack there. It's one of my favorites by Francis Yates, The Art of Memory. Huge book. And it was like one of the core, you were not considered educated. It was one of the core things, one of the core subjects of study for the erudite of the time of time throughout history was memory, and still is a very important part of consciousness. Odin, the great Norse god Odin, he plucked out his right eye to have foresight, and he had two ravens, which became Hugin and Mungin, who these two ravens who were represented on the one hand thought, and the other one memory. So those two are hand in hand. And so memes are a really, really important, powerful construct. And we've seen it in political campaigns and everything. It's just really powerful. So that's what we're tapping into. That's not garbage. That's serious consciousness, baseline, powerful marketing, right? So that is, we want to tap into that. So we intentionally, pump fun doesn't seem very serious. Well, you know what? Serious is kind of boring, right? So it's not. So you want to have some fun baked in, and that's what by launching our serious utility token, that with the fun, symbolic, iconic representation of logic in Spock, then we truly dial into something that has the power to propagate, and we want the concepts to propagate, and because we believe, why? Because we believe that this is going to make something that's very, very important to the world, to civilization, more efficient. And people forget that there's so many great inventions, so many patents that have been filed. That's a whole other thing. There's a treasure trove of intellectual property in the USTPO, in patents and ideas that never saw the light of day because they weren't financed. So one of the things that America has made, that's made America great, is freedom of speech, property rights, all of these freedoms and innovations, not just the innovations in the invention themselves, the household appliances, automobiles, all of all the conveniences of modern life that we have, homes, beautiful homes in America, higher than any other place in the world, home ownership, these sacred property rights that we have, and these wonderful conveniences that we have would not exist without the innovation of American finance. And America has more banks per capita, more decentralized originally banking system. And so in a way, we're kind of through technology, America is going back to its foundation, which is human spirit, human innovation, fostering that, fueling that, and getting funds out, making funds accessible to those with ideas, and those for purchase of the people of, and so then, to fund the ideas themselves, and venture capital has kind of taken over that role. And I see that markets like Pump Fund and crypto markets, and with tokenization of all assets, digital assets, and more open marketplaces, we're going to see more accessibility for great ideas, for funding of great ideas, more than ever before, maybe even since the inception of the country, when we had a much more open banking system. Now we have, I just posted an article I wrote about a couple of years ago about, a community bank, 165,000 pages, 725 pounds of regulations, right? Same as, doesn't matter if you're a bank with 20 employees or 10,000 employees in America, that's what you have to deal with. 7 different regulatory agencies overseeing in one way or other, not just the ones that you know about, and all these different types of charters. It's a lot could be accomplished just by lightening the load and allowing bankers to do what they're meant to do, and what they should be their purpose, right? It's to find good ideas and fund them, and grow their communities, and not just geographic communities though either. Affiliation communities, ideological communities, professional communities. The communities are no longer defined just by the geography of a town square. There's now a digital town square, digital communities. So very passionate, as you can tell, about the huge importance of making our banking system robust, making our funding system in whatever form it is, and banking. And in my book Neobank, I talk about the history of banking and how it evolved and what the core elements are. And sometimes we forget what the core elements are of banking. But the biggest thing is trust, right? And that used to be easy to do in the community where everybody knew everybody. And so that is the basis of my issued patent, not a provisional patent. It's an issued patent for the NEO score, which is a way to, I envision that this global village, actually, I think it was one of the first books I read as a child. I read Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. I think he might have coined the term global village. And so that's how long I've been aware of that's the trajectory of civilization is towards, we'll have geographic, but we'll also have digital communities, and we'll live and we have a global village where the world is smaller than it ever was before, in a sense. And we can have villages of people, across national and county, definitely across county lines, right? So that is where we're headed. And the patent that I have was to bring back the community aspect of lending to in a digital world. So basically, just utilizing social information, and not in a really positive way, where it says something about someone. It doesn't say the absence of this does not nothing needs to be read into the absence of connections and networks, but the existence of someone's social network, a social graph that has a duration and quality to it, and we have an algorithm that looks at the network of the networks, and that just shows in community engagement and interaction. Give the same kind of can give eventually can give a banker the same kind of comfort that would be possible in the community. But part of the problem is in the geographical world, in physical reality, you can look somebody in the eye and shake their hand, and you have that a really sort of tangible, visceral sense of who that person is, which it's true. Loans used to be done based on the basis of a handshake. Now it's a little bit more difficult. So that's another thing that my score does is it's AI resilient, quantum resilient, and some of it is kind of simple. Well, everything's simple when you know how, but you look at the network of networks and the duration of networks. That's one of the hardest things to fake, right? So you look at my profile, for example, of maybe 1,000 CEOs that follow me on, or C-level folks that follow me on LinkedIn. And my profile has been on there for 8 years. And many of the people that are in my inner circle have also been on there for 5 years. And contrast that to someone who pops into my feed and messages me, hey, to sell me something or recruit me, and obviously knowing nothing about me. And you look at their profile, and it's a stolen profile or a very dubious profile that's only been on there for 2 months. It's just like a credit. I mean, it does. It's information about you does accumulate, and how you build a portfolio of reputation that's kind of the way you want to be thinking about your presence. To increase used to be something called a clout score that would reward people for their influence on a just because people with influence can market things, right? And so same kind of idea. It's all laid out, but in the essence, to make it really, really simple, the best bankers in the world, and I was trained by one of the top institutions in the world, 200-year-old institution that was also one of the first as well to move online, but they still maintained as a sort of a legacy their ancient axiom, which is, I've learned, not as well known as I thought, and there's different variations of this, but the best one for the best bank, and the reason I'm holding up my hand is there's five. There's five elements to this. They're called the 5 C's of credit, or the 5 C's of character, or the 5 C's of capital, 5 C's of lending, 5 C's of underwriting. These 5 C's in this order are: number 1, character; number 2, credit; number 3, capacity; number 4, capital; number 5, collateral. And a lot of folks that aren't familiar with banking, or haven't been in banking, or haven't worked with a premier institution, think that this is flipped, right? We all think of hard money lenders and things like that. That's awful. In my personal opinion, an awful business. High interest rates and huge penalties if you don't pay, and often, and it's not pleasant for anybody because a lot of times those loans don't pay and people lose their collateral, and then everyone's upset, and so the lender gets their collateral back and it's destroyed. So what sophisticated, wise institutions train their bankers to do is, if you think, character, you go through the 5 C's and you say, well, they got good collateral, so I'm going to do the loan. No, if you're doing the loan because you think that the collateral is good enough, you shouldn't be doing the loan, because you don't ever want to have to collect that loan. On the other hand, if you knew something about their character, which is impossible now, but was solved by my patent. So that's my patent solves for the forgotten C, which is the most important C, and credit has basically become a poor stand-in at that, for everything about character would be wrapped up in your credit score, right? And capacity. So those are important things. But your history of payment, which is your credit score, and your capacity of payment, your ability to pay, those are and then your capital, because that shows that sort of your track record, in one way of thinking. Although it wouldn't, if you were to lend on capital only, Steve Jobs probably wouldn't have gotten a loan, or wouldn't have gotten VC backing, right? That's why we had to go to VCs, right? Because as the banks became more and more strict, they weren't allowed to lend on character and be able to see into someone's soul and just say, yeah, I believe in this guy's vision, and make a loan based on that. That doesn't, fly in today's construct in any jurisdiction under any regulatory authority of banking. And I'm sure that's a good thing. I think that, and it could be changed if we can get back to getting a better sense of a person's character. And that's what the NEO score does. That's the really big thing, the really big fundamental thing, and the hard thing, right? And it doesn't need to replace necessarily a credit score. It can be in parallel to a credit score, and we don't even call it a credit score because that would invoke a whole bunch of regulations. So it's a character score, more like clout scores or karma scores and things like that you see on social media. It's a score that can be applied on platforms. Like, it sure would be great on Pump Fun, wouldn't it, if you knew that if you could, instead of getting somebody who's completely random and anonymous offering you all these services, and if you've never launched a coin, if you that's the first thing that happens is you get a huge influx of sometimes legitimate, but more often than not questionable folks that want to market services to you, right? And you don't get to know their name. You don't know anything about them. You look at their profiles, they're new and they're fresh, or they're bought and they're fake. And all those things be easily detectable by the Neo score. So that's a whole application, that whole segment that isn't really being that I haven't, that's a whole other. There's so many uses. Like I do talk about how employers, anybody that uses a credit score could use this in conjunction with a credit score, or eventually as an alternative once all the regulatory requirements are satisfied, and or we're outside of a jurisdiction that has regulations that apply to this score, which is so there are, but it's a huge important thing to level the playing field, give, and it's not just immigrants, right? Legal immigrants that come in that have no score and can't get a cell phone, can't rent a decent place, forget about getting a mortgage. It's not just those folks, and and I'm talking about the legal immigrants, of course. Yeah, we won't get into all that, but good, hardworking legal immigrants that came here officially with well qualified in some cases, and extremely well qualified in some cases, like the extraordinary alien visas, where people are, even if some people say, oh well, they hire cheap developers. I'm not going to go into the whole area, but believe me, even in those categories, the amount those people that have gone through the process legally, even if the process is flawed, it's not an easy process. I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of pages of documentation, often proof of credentials, which they could be fudged, but if nothing else, these are people that want to be here really bad, right? And that's a pretty strong filter. But even somebody who's like an extraordinary alien, who is a top executive from Bay Street, which is Toronto's equivalent of Wall Street in Canada, they could have a perfect credit score up there, have a vice president title, come down here, they can't get anything. They have to get a prepaid for a phone. They have to get a prepaid phone. They have no credit, and they can't. And the funny thing is that their score was with Experian or TransUnion or Equifax, one of the big bureaus. They can't call the head office and say, "Hey, I'm moving down to the States. Can you just switch my file over?" How insane is that, right? This with the Neo score, you never have to worry about that. That's one of the big things that we can promise out of the gate, is that as the owner of your data, you decide how it's used and it follows you. And if you want to give it to a lender, you can give it to a lender. You could say, check my Neo score. Or lenders will, as lenders start to adopt Neo score, they'll say, oh, you don't have a credit score? Well, or you have your credit score is what they call a thin file, because you are just graduating from college, and meanwhile you've got a massive, you've been busy on working on community projects and doing all kinds of fantastic things, a little bit of which is captured on with, and no judgment, don't have to worry about party pictures or anything like that. It's not a judgment of character. It's like looking at the quality and duration and extent of a person's network are some of the things that are captured in the algorithm, and at your will, right? So it's not Big Brother watching you. It's at your will what you share and don't share. So and all the other scores, they're gathering all that information, and you don't know what they have. This one, what they have, or what's in your Neo score, and if there's something wrong, you can correct it, and that saves everybody time and money. Much more efficient process. So that's a deeper dive into the Neo score. It's bringing character back into the financial transactional world, including credit, character and credit. Using technology to bring us back to the good old days in a way, you could say. So yeah, that is the second prong. So you got the Ingram, and every time one of these banks or an employer pings that score, they have prepaid Spock tokens, and that single use that coupon, if you will, they use their coupon, they use their token, it's used up, it's burnt in crypto speak, and guess what? The supply of Spock is limited. So not only is it fixed to begin with, it decreases, it decrements every time somebody uses those score, and you get a large financial institution that's doing thousands of these. There's 660 million credit inquiries in America per year, right? It's a small number for a financial institution. So even if we charge financial institutions $1 USD for a consumer to help with to give more detailed, a completely new source of data for a consumer loan origination of any kind or amount, that's great, because a loss of a loan or failure to verify ID, because the score can also be used for ID verification. We'll talk a little bit more about that on another segment, but that verification, if it and that score, if that reduces your default, if that helps you avoid one bad loan in a month, that's, you will be, that financial institution will be a Spock lover for life, right? And so then the other one is the Ingram evaluation matrix, which now that's the model that uses the data, so that the banker can use that data themselves, their own brain, or they can use their augmented brain with the Ingram evaluation matrix, which has AI look at all the data, the Ingram evaluation or the NEO score, and any other sources of data that are plugged in, and this is patented, plug into the model, and then looks at what the organization wants. That's the strategic goals, looks at their strategic fit, look at the financial impact of that loan, and the risk factors and the feasibility. So in order, there are strategic fit, feasibility, financial impact, and risk. Those are the four quadrants, if you will, of the Ingram evaluation matrix. Very simple, but very robust. It can be used for a $100 million merger transaction. It just means that it could be generate a 100-page document if it's a super high stakes decision, or it could be a process that you use in your brain. And that's how that's where the explainability comes in, because AI we don't even know all the tools and methods, and they may change, and we don't know when they change. It's a bit of a black box when we ask AI to give us advice or guidance on something, and it's not standardized. And that's okay, but the output has to be standardized to be explainable to some degree, right? So whatever tools the AI uses and whatever sources of data it uses, it can take that and put all that into this Ingram evaluation matrix, sort of leveling down, simplifying all the information into something that is explainable, auditable, manageable for a human. And this is what NIST requirements, this is what regulators don't know what the solution is yet, but this, I believe, is it. And I've had discussions, high-level discussions. I'll leave it at that. This is very important to find this meeting of the minds between AI and humans to make it explainable. And then, so it's pretty easy on the AI side it's easy when you know how, and this is patented. To take all that information, quantize, make it objective, what can be made. Some of it's subjective, is subjective, like the strategic fit pieces, like who you are, what you want, what your objectives are. That depends on the people involved and all kinds of factors, right? So that is the Ingram evaluation matrix. And the third part, well, we're almost out of time, and this is the most important part, which is we're really going to get into next week, is, and I do this every couple of days. So the next one would be Monday at 6 p.m. But the machine to machine side of things, machines need this too. Machines know that they need to make their decisions explainable, and so here's a way to do it. And you give your autonomous or semi-autonomous agent a wallet, and it's going to ask for it. It already knows about Spock. If you ask your autonomous agent, if it's on Moltbook, it already knows about Spock and the MBC-20 protocol and the inscriptions that are inscribed in Spock that are readable, machine readable, and so it knows about that. And you could direct it to get Spock, or it will find Spock on its own. And if it doesn't, that's fine. Because that's where our focus is going to be over the next few days, and however long it takes. Imagine how fast things, we know how fast things happen when they go viral amongst humans. Imagine when something goes viral amongst machines that are 1,000 times faster in the decision-making process, and they can auto-detect any BS very, very quickly, especially if they have the Ingram evaluation matrix and NeoScore for, I'm going to leave it at that because we're at an hour, but you probably have questions, but they're going to be answered on maybe on Monday. I'll have another announcement. So you see, I don't hype a lot, and I really don't want to get ahead of myself and be promised. I rather say, hey, well, obviously with the conference, I have to tell you in advance that it's happening, and then hope that it happens. So that happened with the Neobank conference, right? And beyond my wildest expectations, we got the head of the Senate Banking Committee to be our keynote, and I'm introducing him. That's a great honor, and we're, speaking to 1,800 potential institutions. We have 1,800 members in the Bankers Institute, which I'm a faculty member of. So this is moving very quickly. You're very early, and I'm still trying to get the word out to my friends and family. I recommend that you do the same, and the things that are happening are going to get attention and traction. Also graduated from a whole nother community, just graduated from the Nevada Startup Incubator Program. So I'm trying to get them to do a press release. They don't usually do that, but this is a bit special. So, but anyway, that's happened. And more importantly than the press release is the community. There's 2,450 entrepreneurs there. I'm also part of TechStars, graduate from TechStars program, and that's a pretty big community because I think I know entrepreneurs are very interested in this, are going to be dialing into this, and they're going to be probably the next wave of entrance into marketplaces, even like Pump Fund, because Pump Fund, although it's always been fun till now, and it still will be fun, but we're now in the VisiCalc moment, as I always say, where PCs went from being fun and games and risque entertainment into along comes a thing called VisiCalc, the first spreadsheet, and then Excel and Lotus Notes or Lotus 123, or dating myself there. So when these spreadsheets came out, boom, every business in the world had to have a PC. Every business in the world is going to have a crypto strategy. I haven't said that before. That's fact. Every human in the world is going to, I'm not going to say have, they're going to, not just like every human in the world doesn't have a car. Not every human in the world has a cell phone, even. A lot more have cell phones. Not every human in the world has a bank account, for sure, right? So this is kind of on the order of having a bank account, right? Having a wallet, having crypto. It might be one of these things like we saw in it wasn't in I'm going to say Africa, but it wasn't. It was on the African continent, where no wire lines, no infrastructure for telephones, right? What did they get? They leapfrogged that because with mobile phones. So they went straight to wireless, skipped the telephone lines, and it's way more efficient, right? And that's where we're going. I think that everybody is going to want a wallet, and everybody's going to want crypto. And a lot of this is going to be handled by machines. Machine-to-machine commerce is going to be bigger than human commerce, according to Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, and a number of others that are saying similar things. And so that is that's I think that's a wrap for tonight. So see you at 6 p.m. and we'll have some more updates then. We've gotten a lot accomplished, and we're very early days, just getting started. Live long and prosper. Take care.
You gotta keep it under an hour. So good, but you gotta keep, you can't render past an hour. Easy for me to say, because I do that with radio all the time. How many people? Oh, I'm so burnt today. Look at me, I've got like wind burn.